My name is John Barlow, currently running for mayor of the city of Detroit. Some people call me Jonathan, some people call me Barlow. We're going with John for right now. Leveling the playing field. That's what I believe my life's passion and purpose is, or continues to be. I hate to see those who are marginalized, disenfranchised, continue to get left out of conversations, not have a seat at the table, and then succession across the board. I've been a individual who's been placed in the intersection of legacy, and sometimes I've seen nepotism, but then I've seen opportunities not be presented to those, and then ultimately talent become underutilized. So I'm just a very passionate advocate for passing the baton to the next generation and preparing us to be ready for whatever the future holds as a community, as a village. Yeah, my future is a long-term future. I don't plan on just coming and leaving tomorrow. Detroit has an opportunity to become an international innovation hub. That definitely starts with making sure that we address one of our core issues, which is family and the village approach to issues or items or topics that need to be addressed. And so in order for us to really reach our potential, I believe that we need a leader that has the ability to facilitate conversations, but also has the experience and foresight to be able to pave a way and create a strategy and plan to really have as many stakeholders go about this goal. Well, I've been debating and really digging deep into that very question. I'm someone who looks very high level to see where's the root problem of any initiative, and looking at national initiatives, then looking at what sometimes becomes a hodgepodge or a mixture of the world's problems and how they kind of resonate and kind of reside here in Detroit. I think we have a great opportunity to kind of fix some of the world's problems by piloting certain solutions right here in Detroit. And so when I look at the core issue, my plan is to reach every family, because we're in a day of technology in which we can really clinically hold the hand of each individual and each family in order to really have them come to the table of village to either be supported or to bring value. And so one of the core issues I think a lot of individuals talk about, a lot of leaders around the city, is affordable housing. But before you get to affordable housing, you have to deal with the foundation issue, which is homeless prevention, the foster care network and ecosystem that supports a lot of our children within DPS. And so I can go create all the houses in the world for those who might be middle class or anything like that. But then we constantly have a dripping effect of those middle class to poverty level, in which we have to plug that drain. And so one of the biggest goals that I have is to make sure that we very well can touch everyone in order to make sure that we properly profile them in order to help them get to the next level of life. Well, part of it is dealing with our education system, very well having a meeting with the school board members and the superintendent in order to make sure that we do a turnaround and wrap resources and our arms around the school system and the education system. And that's both charter and public schools. Outside of that, the number one goal of mine is to make sure that I identify all major investors that can very well come into the market in order to help create community innovation hubs, so that we can start a fast track on creating one-stop business centers and other activities for our families to do what they would normally have to go to New Labs or Black Tech Saturdays or downtown for, but they can do it right there in their neighborhood. And so the first 30 days will be very, very, very accelerated. I don't want to say it'll look like what we're experiencing in the White House, but I'm looking to engage every last stakeholder in the transition period, but then in those first 30 days to make sure that everyone has a strategy that fits into the unified agenda. A lot of times our leaders get in front of the camera when it's a hot topic, but how can we create a unified agenda, some common denominators that says that us as a village actually became successful by the end of the year? And that's what I plan on setting forth. I think part of it is knowing who it is that is surveying, well, not surveying, but surveilling our neighborhoods, who's the individuals from law enforcement that are in our communities. But I think it also deals with how they're perceived, or how they're, how should I say it, building relationships in the community. A lot of these officers are either too young to understand the history, the tradition of the community, and then they haven't had enough time to build the relationships. And so neighborhood policing is definitely something that has to be concentrated on and tended to in order to build the right relationships with those who are policing and the community leaders. But more so than any of that, the strategic plans for each neighborhood have to have the right smart and safe design in order to help that process. But lastly, and I've said this on numerous of podcasts and other media platforms, that individuals like Zeke from New Era, Mr. Blue from Detroit 300, and even more groups that can participate, they need to be engaged just like they're doing now, but from a village perspective, and ensuring that they have the proper resources to limit anything that can be escalated within our community atmospheres. A lot of times there's a lot of preventive work that we can do in order to save ourselves from any bad statistics or anything else that puts us at a disadvantage from building community and bringing investment to the city. Well, you got to remember, I'm the only candidate that constantly works with small businesses. I'm the only one right now working with the likes of Invest Detroit through my partnership company, X Big Tech, and other accelerator programs across the city where we're picking out founders and making sure that their ideas get to market as quickly as possible. A lot of our ecosystem is still fragmented and scattered, in which we're not literally holding the hand, and you'll hear me say that a lot, holding the hand of that business entrepreneur or that founder with a great idea and taking them through the process. They have to be able to really understand when and why it is that they need to go to Tech Town, or when it is that why it is that they need to go to Detroit Means Business or DEGC or Motor City Match in order to get to the next level. And I believe ultimately that Detroit being an international innovation hub means that we're not creating an assembly line to create necessarily one single product. We're creating an assembly line to spin off as many ideas of innovation, to create as much IP, and to make sure that we're looking like Dubai or other places of the world who has something like the Museum of Future, in which they're chronicling all the genetics around the world. Because those are the type of hubs that you need, and the type of think tanks and brain trust in order to advance our automotive companies, our big three, to the next level in terms of transportation, infrastructure, mobility, and things of that nature. So you really have to have a world's view and a bird eyes view of everything that's going on, and really in order to advance us to the next level and make us the city of the future. It's a balancing act. One, we need some type of form of rent control. That's first and foremost. We have to create a baseline and a standard in which our middle class, or those at the lowest poverty level, can at least access some type of shelter, minimally. Again, I say a lot of times that we're not identifying where our families are, thus they end up falling through the gaps. And so the land bank is there's a serious issue there, when you talk about developers, I just left a conversation this morning in which a developer says they only want 20 homes. They only want one block, but it's already being given to another contractor or another program in which there's nepotism and other things taking place in that program. And so we really have to understand why it is that we have 20 to 50 potential successful cases, but we have 100 to 200 people saying, I'm not being able to help bring my resources, become successful, and nobody's even paying attention to me. And so there's so many people getting overlooked right now. And that's the only reason I'm really running, is because I'm not going to allow the status quo to continue to overlook these conversations or these topics and continue to allow Detroit to be a popularity high school contest when it comes to election cycles. It's not fair to the people. People are getting left out, and it's time out for it. That's such a great question. I'm so glad you asked it. Let me tell you first where it starts. Last night, when I was giving a keynote speech at New Labs for Green Info Urban Style podcast, I talked about the tale of two futures, because a lot of people want to talk about the tale of two cities, but it's really the tale of two futures. Are we going into clean energy? Are we going into food sovereignty? And are we going into these clean air, and going into these matters that deal with climate democracy, and whether or not we're going to even create the atmosphere for the next generation? And so a lot of times when we talk about the difference between, the best way I can say it is this. When we talk about the fact that students are not being exposed properly, when we talk about they're being told that the phone is a bad tool, but yet and still they can tell their story through that tool. And not only can they tell their story, but they can tell the story of the community. There's so many resources in DPS, media resources, that were given over to DPS, put under other management control, and those high-tech production resources have totally gone to waste and are outdated now. DPS could have been telling their story in a totally different way. They could have been telling the story of our communities, and therefore our neighborhoods would have been branded properly and had a whole nother spark of innovation and imagination of what those neighborhoods can be. When I was growing up, I watched a documentary video, and when they wanted to transform a city, they went to the little kids and said, what do you want to see 20 years from now? We're not allowing that spark of dreaming to happen. Really, I'll be honest with you. Detroit stopped dreaming a long time ago. It's time for Detroit to dream again. And that's why I'm here, to just hopefully lead us into the direction to where we show ourselves that anything is possible. I think across the board, engagement is low. We're talking about families whose parents don't vote and kids don't want to go to school. That's a total lack of civic engagement and development engagement across the board. And so we need to continue to facilitate relationships in such a way where everyone is valued. If the average citizen, the average youth, or the average parent does not feel that they're valued when they come to the table and that their voice will be heard, then we can't expect them to be engaged. And we have to talk to them where they are. That means that if we need interpreters or translators who are more familiar with the way and the customs and the cultures of our different communities, they understand the different nuances between Boston Edison and East Chalmers or Indian Village and Cody Rouge. If they can understand those nuances, then we can hopefully build those conversations to where we become more productive. And so when you start talking about education, and when you start talking about how do we turn the table on or change the trajectory of how these students and these youths and these parents engage, we have to look at what's being done right now. I've heard every story from we're paying our kids to go to school to like you just said, they're not really wanting to attend. Well, you got to think they just came out of COVID. The atmosphere in which they're going to differs almost from day to day, depending on if they're homeless or jumping from home to home every day. So again, it comes to reaching every family, bringing money, jobs, and homes to the average family, talking to them like we care about them, because they don't care about what we know until they know that we care. And it's really about holding their hand. If I have a student or a youth that is not attending school, why am I not attaching them to a program like the Alphas or the Kappas or the Qs? Why am I not linking them up with a church that has the opportunity to wrap other social working type of resources around that youth? Get this, I don't care if you're a politician, a preacher, a litigator, or a nonprofit specialist. None of these leaders are actually getting into the weeds and getting into on a grassroots level in order to say, this is what can turn around this one youth, and this is the success cases and the best practices that we need to deploy. So I just say that me as a leader, I can't overlook anyone. Everyone has to be tended to, and that's the way we start to really engage and create the metrics of turnaround and success. I'm different and I play at a different level. It's that simple. They do not, meaning they, other competitors or other candidates or any other leader in this city does not play at the level I play at. They cannot go to Miami, Atlanta, DC. They cannot go internationally and do the type of work or attach themselves to the type of initiatives that I do. There's a reason why I've been studying decriminalization, mass incarceration, and prisoner reentry for the last several years. They can't even tell you where those national initiatives are housed at, let alone how they're affecting or trickling down to the programming that's residing here in the local city with the likes of Darrell Woods or Kenneth Nixon. See, there's a macro level that translates into this micro atmosphere that we all have to be aware and cognizant of. And if it's not being led nationally anywhere else, we need to step up and be the leaders here. And that's why, and that's exactly why I'm here, because when I go around the country, yeah, at times I feel like Detroit could have a better brand on it. We could be seen in a different light, but a lot of people around the country see us sometimes as confused, not together, not united, and that breaks my heart, because that means that they can see why we're not successful and why we keep on letting people fall through the gaps. And so what also makes me different, and this is the last thing I'll say, I know where all the talent went. We lost over the last 15 to 20 years some of the greatest talent of this generation, and they've gone to other markets. How is it that we have so many leaders that know so much about what needs to be done, but can't identify who's head of Kevin Hart Studios, or who already worked in the Obama administration that went to Detroit Public Schools, or who possibly has the best connections and the most billionaires at his disposal, but he lives in Miami, but went to Detroit Public Schools? It's certain individuals that can very well bring us major investors, bring us resources, bring us best practices that ultimately creates the Detroit Film Office like Atlanta has, or creates a riverfront that Detroiters actually invest in, rather than just giving it away to privatization and then claiming that the rest of the public parks can be for everybody. See, the plans have to be looked at, and you need a leader who's willing to really tell you what the real is and be transparent about it. You asked a great question. I'm glad I got an answer for it. Participatory democracy is one of the greatest things that we can explore or engage in. And what it means is this, that we're allowing average citizens to get engaged at every level of decision making. I've been quoted in the Atlanta Voice for my work across the nation for participatory democracy. And so what I strive to constantly do is make sure that technology and transparency works hand in hand in order for every citizen to be knowledgeable of every next step, so that they can engage properly, so that you can bring everybody along with where things are. A lot of times plans get thrown out there in which, people kind of hear them, but they're not grasping them. They're not digesting them. And so what's necessary is that education across the board becomes paramount, and that our metrics for whether or not our citizens are taking in the information needs to be looked at. And so media is such a strong part of that. And so if media starts to work hand in hand in this with the city in order to educate properly, if our city council are working together to really share information rather than sharing what they did last week by themselves, quote unquote, and then our police commissioners and our school board members are all looking at a unified agenda, what are our goals, and how can we communicate that, then I believe we're setting ourselves up for success. And so participatory democracy means that every citizen gets a chance to have a stake and to have a voice at the table. It's, again, having a voice at the table is my differentiator, and it's proven all my work. Look at letstalkroundtable.com. You'll see the type of work that we do. The most professional lesson I've learned is I don't have to be a pit bull and aggressive all the time. I can be a little calm. I can relax. I can listen. I can humble myself. I don't have to know it all. I can be around thought leaders and experts. And so one of the biggest, I wouldn't say challenges, but one of the biggest focus areas that I like to continue to perpetuate is not putting myself in a position of not knowing the most in the room. I don't ever want to know the most. I always want to bring better minds to the table so that I can learn. See, I'm a student of not only what it is that makes us successful, but I'm a student of who it is that you are. I want to learn your name. I don't want to address you by a number. Even if I forget your name, I'm going to ask you next time, what is your name, so that it's engraved in me. Now, the human mind can only remember 1,500 people and really recall them. But get this, if you really love people, you're going to try to go beyond that 1,500. You're going to try to learn as much as you can about everybody so that you have the most diverse experiences when dealing with anybody. Well, I'll put you like this. Out of all the candidates right now, nobody's talking to the candidate, the new Detroiter or someone that's living downtown or midtown. We're really reverse marginalizing and reverse how should I say it, outcasting those in this election cycle. Just because everybody knows we need to give more attention to the community. But we haven't even talked about what allows us to give more attention to the community. And so you're always going to hear this downtown versus community conversation, and they're going to try to pump it up. But what they're trying to do is scare everyone into these popularity politics again and not talk about the solution. The solution is get our communities ready for investment. It's that simple. Get our communities so ready for investment that no matter who comes into the city or who wants to partner with the city, our communities can get a piece and get a stake so they can create legacy and generational wealth. That's what it comes down to. Again, I have individuals that have prime real estate that haven't had their hand held. However, when it gets to time for capital, they don't have the outlets, the resources, or the relationships to do so. And so it's just, again, from land bank to relationship facilitation to just making sure that the community understands innovation hubs, community innovation hubs, and what that means for them, creating their businesses through the major thoroughfare. I'll tell you this last thing. Grandmont Rosedale Community Association, and then you look at East Warren Development Association. If you combine both of their programmings together, you have the ultimate type of facilitation of what a community needs in order to get to the next level. And so we just have to take best practices that are taking place right up under our nose in order to deploy the right type of action steps across the city. Well, I'll tell you this, I'm the only one that rides the bus when I want to. Sometimes when I have to. If I want to come from the airport, come downtown, I'm so glad that they have been innovative enough to create those one bus shuttles for those type of routes. I will say this, when you feel the problem, you can address the problem. If you're not waiting on a bus, or if you don't know how late it comes, or if you don't understand the cleanliness or the type of experience it takes, or the type of experience you have when you go on a bus or use public transportation, you can't fix it. And so some candidates might try to get on a bus once or twice during this election season, but they don't do it to know the people. And they don't do it before it's election time or when the cameras come on. Again, I can tell you that 20 people, when it's cold outside, we got 20 homeless people sitting on the bus seats at the Rosa Parks bus terminal, because shelter and homeless prevention is not cross-pollinating or getting over to the different departments and the different operational factors in our city. So nobody's seeing a problem. They see the problem over there, but then they don't understand how to fix it, or how it's tampering or damaging other city services and other atmospheres. And so ultimately, when it comes to transportation, I've been at Wayne State, I've talked to the students, they missing classes because the queue line not running on time. And so ultimately, when you look at where we need to go, when you start talking about electric shuttles and electric buses, advanced air mobility, if we ever look to make a play for the Olympics like we did in 62 and 68 when we came in second, if we look to get to that level of the future, we really have to understand what it is that we can do now infrastructure-wise and how we can relieve some of that pressure. And I think we've had a number of different programs to really get that done, but it really says I think we really should take it upon ourselves to say, as a village, how are we supporting each other? Does the local community or the local church have their own Uber app so that their members can really provide carpooling and car shuttling amongst themselves so that it's a closer, tight-knit community and they're really more efficient in what they're doing? We're not innovating, we're not dreaming, we're not trying to bring everyone into the digital age. We're leaving everyone stuck in the industrial society, and that's again why I'm running. Well, I think one of the biggest things that any leader is going to have to do is look at the manufacturing landscape and these warehouses that need to be repurposed for new jobs and new industry creation. And so when you look at energy efficient contractors, when you look at the great things that Robert Barksdale and others are doing with MECA, which is Michigan Efficient Energy Contractors Association, you have to know economic development to know how do we make the community greener. But again, I'm the only one who's been around the country talking about climate democracy. I can pinpoint to you who is leading the charge for climate democracy. I also can point to you the work that I've done during the foreclosure crisis that ended up talking about early childhood education, but most importantly, food sovereignty. And so when you talk about can we grow in our backyards, or have we been, are we suffering from any industrial fallout or bad soil? There's a lot of intricacies that go into making this a green city. And again, once we protect our atmosphere, once we protect nature, once we understand how it's affecting us, once we understand all the nuances of trauma to solution, because we're all experiencing trauma in some type of way, and it might not all be psychological, but have already moved towards biological issues, we have to understand what are the dietary and nutritional things that works us towards solution that is layered on top of the psychological or triggers that we have that disturb our mental, that either get us depressed, or some have even advanced into a mental health arena. And so if you can't hold every family's hand, if you can't reach every family, then one of those problems are going to pop up, they're going to escalate, there's not going to be a support system, and then us as a village suffers. Well, let's talk first about the fact that we have to be compliant for those funds over the next year and a half. So whoever comes in as mayor for the next year or so will have to make sure that they keep that team in place and has a good working relationship with that team. Shout out to that team that will make sure that those funds were handled properly. Because if those funds weren't handled properly, just think about what funds we're not going to get access to once they take an audit or take a look at those. And so that's the first step to make sure that ARPA at least was spent or distributed properly. The second thing we have to realize is, if you've never helped a mayor increase its federal funding by increasing its capacity, then you don't know what needs to be done in order to fill these gaps. I, again, play at a different level. I'm just different. I'm the only one who's gone around the country trying to find mayors that normally have populations that normally don't suffice them having the capacity or give them the capacity to go after extra federal funds or other funding sources. And so your fundraising development program and strategy has to be paramount, but it also starts with the private-public partnerships that you put in place in order to show why your city warrants or merits these type of opportunities. And so relationships play a big part of that. Having access to the White House plays a big part of that. I'm the only candidate that can talk to both sides of the aisle and have done all over the country. Everyone here is stuck in this tunnel vision a lot of times when you start talking about Detroit, it being Democratic. I love the Democrats, but I love the Republicans because I love people. And so ultimately, when you look at the funding mechanisms and who needs to be in place, we really need to have the experts at the table and the top of the top. And I question a lot of times whether or not we've done a full inventory of what our talent resources are, both locally and nationally, that are willing to help us fill those gaps. And so back to how I can make sure that all relationships are fighting and supporting Detroit, I'll just say I'm the best one to do it because I just play at a different level and I know more people and more best practices that's taking place across the country. Again, I'm the tech guy, I'm the businessman. So that's the only thing that I plan on doing, but it's for the reasons that the citizens definitely benefit from. I don't want to use tech, but for any other reason besides transparency, so the citizens can see what's taking place, engagement, so the citizens and all stakeholders can very well be a part. But even more so, technology and innovation is going to be the heartbeat of tomorrow's currency and ability to survive and become successful. And so you need someone. Most companies nowadays are hiring tech expertise as their CEOs. And the reason why is because a lot of these operations for any corporation or any government or municipality has to be truly anchored and truly strategized from a tech perspective, because all systems, all decisions have to involve tech in some type of way. And so what I don't want to ever see is the city getting robbed because we're paying too much for tech because someone in that leadership position doesn't understand it. I believe that I will be Detroit's next mayor because I actually love the city and I see all the people. It's that simple.